It's 3 years since the vicious murder of student Uyinene Mrwetyana, and the foundation in her name is keeping the flame burning in her memory and in activism around women's gender rights. It's calling for harsh sentences for the perpetrators of GBV. They held a commemorative walk to the streets of East London as the man who murdered her, Luanda Botha, serves 3 life sentences in prison. Anele Mda is a gender activist and was a keynote speaker at the weekend event commemorating her passing and joins me now. Anele, good evening to you and welcome. Thanks so much for being with us. Does it feel now that with the passage of time and all the outrage that we saw at that time, the rape and murder of this young girl who had her entire future ahead of her, that has caused the needle to shift in how GBV is treated, handled, and particularly the perpetrators of GBV are punished in South Africa?
Thank you, Iman. Thank you for having me. Counting that we are now on the 3rd year since the atrocious passing of Uyinene, I won't lie and say to you there has been any remarkable, significant shift on how the status quo was then and how it is now. From a policy framework point of view, you could say that there is some meaningful change in as far as passing of the laws. But we are not dealing here with a pandemic that requires very sophisticated glossy papers that have got words that do not have meaning when it comes to the ground. Having been in East London the past weekend and being part of the commemorative walk, also an awareness on the gender-based violence pandemic in South Africa, I can say to you, the fear that lives amongst women, the fear that lives amongst young girls is very scary. It's the reality that says, even people as they speak about Uyinene in the past weekend, it's like they are speaking about an incident that happened only yesterday. Because as big as it was in its impact, and as the wide as the uproar happened at the time, we have not seen changes. I mean, I come from East London. I'm definitely sure you followed a story in January of Nostelo in Mtebeni, a University of Forte student who was butchered by her boyfriend, and her pieces were stuck in a suitcase. That is in the same city where Uyinene comes from. And that tells you the extent to which this environment that women and girl children find themselves in has not changed.
The analogy that you made in that response invoked the word pandemic. When we think about the viral pandemic that we had in our country, we instituted a month-long lockdown in order to really deal with the situation and to manage it. When you think that we are in a pandemic of violence and of fear in South Africa, you brought your young girl to the studio today. I have young girls at home who don't even want to walk outside of the house. They don't even want to jog in the neighborhood. Forget about women that are living in communities that are poorly lit and are high crime areas. The responses, and as you say, from a policy framework, they're there. Given that we are in this pandemic, what is the pandemic-like response that is demanded of in this situation from our government?
A pandemic-like response will be a crisis response kind of an intervention, Iman, that will deal urgently and rapidly in approach, in action, and in words. Let me break it down for you how this would look like. Just as you know, in 2018, we had a national shutdown summit, which ultimately culminated into what now you have as the National Strategic Plan, a document that drives how we must as government embark on curbing gender-based violence. But without looking at now drastic actions that must be done, that must be taken to say we are not just going to have a situation where the country is normalized in this state of gender-based violence that is perpetual, where there is no woman and no young girl who must worry about being sick and that can lead to them dying. But they get to worry about, when I get out of the house and walk across the house to the shop, what are those two men that are lingering the streets likely to do to me? We need a society where there is a restorative justice, but that is victim-focused than being a perpetrator-centered. Because right now, we are talking about a situation where even as you may be a woke person, if I may use that language, you may know your rights, you may know how to institute justice in your favor on whatever that you need justice on. But you are not guaranteed that when you arrive in the terrain of justice, the attitude of justice will put you at the center, will regard you as the priority. The priority can never be the perpetrators.
So given that, and given the fact that, you know, we're a young democracy, I know that it's a very tied term now, that the way our laws have developed and the creation of our constitution was very much a creation of our time. Is there room to put pressure then on the judiciary to reverse what you're saying, which is that perpetrator-centric meting out of justice to a restorative justice sort of model? And that will cascade into other things that, you know, areas like law enforcement and others must respond to.
Constitutionally, there are so many things, man, that one would say they go against applying drastic measures that will ensure that getting justice for women is not just about getting people arrested and being given multiple sentences, because the reality is that men are no longer afraid of these multiple sentences. They're no longer afraid of jail. They're not even no longer even afraid of anything harsher that you can think about. So it's important that we should not be scared to go and touch the Constitution, review it when it comes to issues that relate to gender-based violence, because for as long as we think that the right to life is only about the perpetrator, but the right to life of the victim in this case, who might be a person of Uyinene's caliber, who is no more, her right to life is not as important, as sacrosanct as that of a perpetrator. Such require us to go to the Constitution, touch it, review it.
Shouldn't one of the allies, the strongest allies, perhaps the most vocal advocate of what you're saying, be the department that's responsible for this portfolio? How would you appraise how they've been doing on this front? This is the Department of Women, Children and People with Disabilities.
Unfortunately, I will have to say, without a blink of an eye, the department that is meant to champion and do a groundwork on these areas has been an absent landlord. It has been an absent landlord that has categorized cases of gender-based violence according to the limelight, according to the class and the status of the people. It has chosen to make itself to be friends of those that are known. There are many faceless a victim of gender-based violence in this country who do not have their names shown on the screens of TVs, who do not have their names being aired on radios, who do not have their names printed on any print media anywhere. And those are the people whom the Department of Women and Children needs to be part of, not to only exclusively be seen to be around those cases that are prominently featured and are profiled because of the nature of the people involved.
We could talk for a long time about this, and we should, but thank you for sharing that with us, Anele. Appreciate you. Gender activist Anele Mda.